What's going on, guys? So today I'm down here in the shop and we got this little Viper 70. I think it's like a 70cc four-wheeler, mainly made for kids. I do know these things will tow the 200-pound adult because I've worked on another one of these and rode it around, and it'll actually run and do pretty good. But this one's got a little bit of an issue, and I'm gonna see if it'll fire up here for us. I don't know if it will or not. Let's see. Well, I guess it'll help. Let me turn the fuel on there. So you can see there, it's really hard to start. This is the other problem. No matter how hard or how fast or how slow we press the throttle on it, it dies off and it won't stay running. So with that being said, what we're going to end up doing is, I think this thing's been sitting for a little bit. We're going to pop this plastic cover off the side here, and we'll get in there and I'm going to take the carburetor off. And once we get the carburetor off, we'll get it out here on a little bench, and we're going to disassemble it and clean it out, because that's basically what's going on. Is the carburetor stopped up where it's either got bad fuel or something got through the filter or whatever the case may be. It's like anything else with a small carburetor like this. If you let it set, it's going to gum up and it's just not going to run properly. So let me get in here and we'll get this thing took apart, and we'll get the carburetor off, and then once we get it out here, we'll show you what we're going to do to fix it. So now what we'll do is I'll bring this camera in a little bit closer here where you can actually see what we're doing. And like I said, we're going to take this plastic cover off right here, and that's basically just so we can get access up here to the carburetor itself. It's usually easier to take this thing off on the right hand side than it is to take it off on the left, although there is some connections over there that we'll have to take loose. We'll take that off. Oh, we got a leaf in there. We'll get rid of that. But now you can actually see the carburetor up in here. We're going to loosen this one nut, take the accelerator cable loose, we'll take the air filter loose and the intake loose. All of this is done with Phillips head screws. There's very little here that you have to do to get these off beyond basically just what you see there. And these, normally I can just take a pair of needle nose like that, and we can spin that back. We'll pop the little rubber cap off the end here. You see it floating right there. We'll spin this nut off. We'll push the accelerator down, and the cable pops out of this little groove here. If I can get my fat fingers in there and get it to come loose. And since I can't hold on to it with my fingers, we'll just take these stork pliers here and we'll just wiggle it out just like that. Now, we got that loose. This will just push back now. Just wiggle it a little bit there. And there, now we got our throttle cable loose. That's got everything disconnected on this side. We'll take our air intake, we'll loosen it up here. And that'll have that loose enough. And then we can come up here on this front clamp and we'll loosen the actual intake itself. And then what I'll need to do is move you around to the other side and show you the fuel line and the vacuum line that we're going to take loose over there. Alright, so we're over here now. We've got our fuel shutoff valve. It's in the off position. We've got on and reserve. There's two incoming lines. This tank up here has two lines. One's lower in the tank, one's higher in the tank. That gives you your fuel coming in. But what we'll have to do is reach up in here and remove this little clamp on this top hose. Just like that. Now we pulled that one off. I'm hoping you can see this. I don't have a lot of light on this side. But then we're going to come underneath and we're going to take and squeeze the clamp for our fuel line. Just like that. And then we should be able to reach in here and wiggle and pop that loose. Just like that. Now there'll be a little bit of fuel come out of this. It won't be a tremendous amount. Since we've got the fuel valve shut off, we don't have to worry about it just pouring fuel out. If this was still on, you'd have fuel just running continuously. All right, so now that we've got both of these pieces loose on this side, we're going to go back to the other side, and we're actually going to take that carburetor out and start disassembling it. So this air filter will move around a little bit. The intake doesn't move a tremendous amount, but it is a little bit aggravating in here to pop these loose. But once you get the actual air intake part off, you can usually wiggle this and get it to come loose from the intake itself. Then we can slide it out, and we have our choke cable over here on the side. This is a vent drain for the fuel bowl. It just stays attached to the carburetor, no big deal there. But this choke cable has a Phillips screw in it here, and that gas running out of the carburetor now because I turned it over. Got a different screwdriver here. Get in there. And that right there, folks, is the difference between a quality screwdriver and a non-quality screwdriver. Now, I believe this one was a Matco at one time. I'm not sure. The labeling is wore off of it. But the end of it just seems to dig and bite a little better. I think this black one that I was using, it's kind of it's a cheaper brand screwdriver, and the tip of it is pretty wore. So we just made sure we didn't strip that. Now we're going to slide this out. There is an O-ring on this thing, and you have to make sure that it stays on there. You can see it flipping around there just ever so slightly. And then the pin for the choke. So that has our carburetor off. Now, what I'm going to do is get this thing over on a little workbench here where we can set the camera up, and we'll pull the bowl off of it. We'll start cleaning this thing out and see what we've got inside. All right, so right off the bat, you can see we got fuel that's dumped out. I got a little rag here. Just a board here I got set up where I have a place to take this thing apart. The first thing we're going to do is flip it up and let fuel run out of it. There's not going to be a tremendous amount of fuel in these, just a little. It's a small bowl carburetor. Now, this is the bowl cover here for the float. We're going to take the screws out of it and pop this off. Fingers crossed, we're going to be able to disassemble this and reassemble it without a gasket kit. A lot of times that's the case. If you're careful, you can take these apart. And I apologize for the background noise, but it sounds like it's starting to rain outside, so we'll get a little bit of noise on the tin roof there. And there we go. You can see our little rubber O-ring here, but more importantly, if you look right down in here into the bottom of the bowl, there's some black crud down in there that is built up, which is going to contribute to part of our problem, because if you'll look right here, you can see that our primary jet is almost stopped up. Now we're going to have to take that out and clean it. What we'll do is we'll take all this apart, we'll clean it real good, and then we'll put it back together. Still got the wrong size socket. See how tight it is. Oh, it's not bad. Yeah, it's in there, but it's not super tight. So we're going to take that out. Now what we'll see is inside of here, this thing is stop, slam up. We're not going to get anything through there. So what we'll do, we'll take a little bit of cleaner here, stick it on the end, and look at there. Started cleaning it out good. We'll take a small piece of wire or something and run through it just to get it cleaned out. But you can already see it's starting to open up in there. We can't quite see daylight through it yet, but we're getting some cleaner sprayed through it. Yeah, there's still a little bit of crusty stuff in there. That's probably one of the most aggravating things about these little bitty carburetors is they got such small passages in them that it just takes a lot to sit and just make sure that you get each individual piece cleaned out. This is your float. When the carburetor is in and it's mounted like this, like we saw it inside of there, this thing fills up with fuel and this float comes up and stops. Now a lot of times these things will get stuck open and it'll just pour fuel and pour fuel and pour fuel and flood the engine out. Sometimes these floats will crack and they'll get fuel in them and then they don't float anymore. There's like a boat full of water, it sinks. But this one right here seems to be pretty good. It's not stuck. It doesn't seem to have any fuel in it. So I'm gonna grab a piece of wire that we'll get to fit in here. We'll clean this out good, and then we're gonna start cleaning these passages out on this carburetor. So all I done was just took a piece of stranded wire here, stripped the end of it off, and I took, I think, about 3 strands here, twisted them together, and that should be small enough but yet stiff enough for me to put in here and clean this out good. And I'm just rubbing it all over the sides. That twist in it helps to clean this out. Now, they make, I'm sure, tools to do this with, but at the end of the day, I'm doing this just, you know, right here in the shop with what, just basic hand tools and supplies that I've got. And that should have us to a point. I don't know if you can see this or not. Let's see. We're going to spray into the end of this. And I think you can see it spraying through there. So that means that is now cleaned out. Now, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on the camera or not, but I'm going to try to hold it up here where you can see. That is now open. You can see all the way through it. Might be a little bit easier from this side. You can see all the way through that. See daylight coming out the other side. So that's what we want. Alright. So now what we'll do, I got this little pocket screwdriver type deal here. It's like a micro screwdriver. We're going to get in here and we're going to scrape this stuff out. Now, I imagine you can see that stuff just raking out of there. We want to try to get absolutely every bit of this out if at all possible. And we'll spray this out good too. Because if we don't get this out, what's going to end up happening is this stuff right here is going to end up right back in that orifice and stop that jet up. So we're going to try to make sure we clean all that out good. And a lot of times, this is really about all these carburetors need is just a good cleaning. And you can see there we're working a little accelerator pump and there was fuel squirting out of there, so we know that passage is clear. Still gonna run this wire down in it right here. That makes sure we got everything out of there. There's another small passage over here to the side. We can clean it good. This is really the overflow. There we go. And there we go. All right, so we know that's cleared out. Now we're just gonna spray this bowl out good. And you can see it. There's all that varnish stuff that builds up from the fuel. You can see it starting to dissipate over here, but it's still down here. So we just want to get in here and we want to spray this clean. Make sure that this bowl is nice and clean so we don't have any debris that comes back up into our carburetor and stops anything up. Guys, I know I'm being long-winded on this video. Part of it is just because, you know, if you've never done something like this before, I'm trying to make this video to where you can actually, you know, for somebody who's not accustomed to taking one of these apart, do this. The reason I'm doing it is because these carburetors, I think they're about $120 to buy one. They're not cheap. And if I can help you just simply by buying a can of, I just use O'Reilly's brake cleaner. This stuff's relatively safe. I wouldn't recommend using this on like a fuel injected engine or something with electrical sensors and stuff like that, because I think it might be a little harsh on it. But what we're going to do is we're going to get every bit of this cleaned out. And once we get it cleaned out and it's nice and clean looking, we're just going to set it to the side. The next thing we got to do is make sure, get that out of the way, these passages in here are clean. And we're going to make extra sure of that. What I am going to do is see if we can grab this pin It's not going to pull with the tweezers because I don't have it out enough yet. We'll grab it with the needle nose. Guys, that pin is supposed to come out of there. It's just wanting to be a little stubborn, it looks like. It's probably got some varnish around it. Give it a little tap and see what we end up with. And it doesn't look like we're having a whole lot of luck. There we go. All right, so a little stuck in there. We got that pulled out. And we'll take this pin completely out. Hold on to our float. There's our pin. Lay it down. Float comes out. And as the float comes out, the needle comes out. This thing just hangs in here. We're going to spray it off, make sure it's clean. It looks like the tip of it is still intact. It's got a little rubber seal tip on the end of it right there. It's nice, it's clean, it's intact. We're just going to spray a little bit of this varnish off of it. Knock off any of the excess. You know, and putting new fuel in it is going to help dissolve some of that stuff too. Now, what we got right here, this is going to be our seat for our needle. We just need to make sure when we stick this in there that fuel or cleaner comes out of this port right here, because this is where we get our fuel from. And we do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this in on this end now and give it a squirt. And there we go. And some of it sprays back on me, I know, because it's got more pressure than what can go through there. But that tells me that our inlet passage for our fuel is clear now. Fuel can come in and fill the bowl area up, and then it can be picked up by the jets and sent through the carburetor and from the accelerator pump. But what we do need to do is make sure that this right here is clear. Now, there's stuff down inside of there. We're gonna take it loose. Now, you can see how gummy that is. I mean, it's got varnish all over it. I'm gonna come over here and spray it off good. I'm gonna take this rag and wipe it down. Now, it's probably gonna be stained and discolored just as well as the bowl and the inside of the carburetor, because fuel and varnish is gonna stain it up. And I think that's just part of it. But now that we've got it wiped off, you can start to see these little holes in the side right here. And we got to make sure those are clear. And that's where these little wires are going to come in handy, because we're just going to use maybe 2 of them here. I'll try it with 1 first and see if we can push through them. Just like that. Now what we're trying to do is make sure that we knock any of the varnish and debris and stuff out of them to ensure that they're clear. We want every passage in this carburetor to be completely clear. Now, I'm not going to bore you with me sitting here going through every one of these, because there's a bunch of them on here. So I'll probably fast forward the video at this point or cut it and bring it back in when I get ready to do something else. All right, guys, I have went through every one of these and then come back and sprayed it with a little bit of cleaner. I'm going to wipe it down good with the rag here. And I'm going to check all these little orifices, make sure they're still clear. Now, what you can do is put your finger over the end there, stick this into this, and then you can spray some of this cleaner in there, and it's going to come out those little orifices. Now, we got that cleared out. Set it down. Set our jet right beside it. And I believe, if memory serves me correct, there's a little plunger in here. We want to make sure it's free. And then I want to clean in there. Clean that out good. And then I'm going to check that again. And it's working. And you'll see right here. That thing's floating up and down just like it should. Now we got our idle circuit in here. Make sure they're clear. I suspect that But there might be something stopped up in there. We're gonna check this other one first. Make sure it's clear. And that's where it goes back, guys. This is what I said. You got to go through and make sure every single one of these passages is open and clear. If you don't, you're gonna have problems. It's not gonna run right. Probably gonna have to get a different screwdriver because it looks like I'm gonna have to take that little orifice jet out right there in order to clean it good, because I'm not getting anything coming through it. See how it's just pushing back? We're not getting any fuel going through there going anywhere else. So let me grab a small screwdriver so we can take that out. Got a small screwdriver here. There is a slot in these that allows you to put a flathead screwdriver in them, and you can spin them out. Now as we screw that out, there it is. Now what we want to do is we'll make sure this passage is clear. Oh, see, we got fuel coming out of the throat of the carburetor, which is what we want to see. I mean, you got to take into account, there's not going to be a tremendous amount coming out of here. You know, these things are relatively small. It always makes you feel good when a piece falls out. Never had this fall out before, but this is a little brass bushing that goes in there that goes underneath that. This goes in this metering jet right here, and it goes with the skinny side down, just like that. And once it goes in there, this orifice tube goes in there and holds it in place. So there's that. Now, back to this other passage. We've got it out. However, we need to make sure that this is cleaned out. It's got small holes drilled on the sides here. And then what we need to do is spray some cleaner through it. So there's nothing coming through those. So that tells me that this thing must be stopped up down inside of it. So I'm gonna try to clean it out with this piece of wire here. And for this one, we may end up having to get a stiffer piece of wire because whatever's in there is not letting it go through. There we go. All right, so we cleared out. I'm gonna spray in from the back side here. Oops. Perfect. We are cleaned out now. Coming through like it's supposed to. There again, like I said, the key thing is making sure that we get all these passages cleaned out. If you don't get these passages cleaned out, it's not going to run. It's not going to run any better. You saw how it ran beforehand, and you'll get to see how it runs after we put it back together. Because right now, we'll put that back in, screw this jet back on. We'll tighten these up just like we did before with loosening them, because they're not, guys, this stuff's not like tightened down super tight in here. It's got to be tight enough to hold it in place. We're going to drop our needle down into our seat attached to our float, just like that. And then we have to put our pin back in. Now it's tapered on one end. I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not, but it is tapered. So that's the side we want to start in with. We'll get it in there just like that. Now, we're just going to tap it in. And we're not going to drive this thing in like a nail. That's all we're going to do right there is tap it. Because the thing of it is, when we put the bowl back on, it can't slide out because of this indention in the bowl. We'll clean this out again, just to ensure we don't have any debris floating around in there. Make sure a gasket stays in place. It looks like it's trying to swell up on us just a little bit. And they'll do that with age, I reckon. So now, Put this on. We're gonna set it on and make sure that our gasket all the way around. Like I said, guys, we're trying to save some money here. Make sure our gasket doesn't move and that it's in the grooves that it's supposed to be in. As long as it falls back into that groove and it's not bulging out or the bowl's not lifted up at one point, then you should be fine. You can squeeze it right back in there, put the bowl back on, and we'll have this tightened down. Now once we put these screws back in, we'll be ready to put this thing back on the four-wheeler. Make sure these are tight, don't want to leak. Alright, so guys, there it is. We have basically just went through and cleaned this carburetor out. Now we're going to put it back on the four-wheeler and see how it runs. Now, I have not put this plastic cover back on. I will in just a minute. Our choke's on, horn works. Got fuel in the carburetor now. Took the choke off, fired right off. Now we're running. Running good. Best thing to do now, we'll take this thing, we'll put the cover back on it. It's running good. We're gonna put the cover back on right here. And then we'll pop the door open on the shop, see if it's still raining or not out there. I think it's stopped. And if it's stopped, we're gonna take this little puppy for a spin. There you go, guys. So this thing ain't no speed demon. It's only like 70 cc's and I weigh 200 pounds, so it's toting me around just fine. And you see it runs great now. Before, it wouldn't even accelerate to move itself out of its own way. So guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope this video helps you out. I hope it saves somebody some money down the road. You don't have to buy a $120 carburetor. And stick with us. We'll be coming to you with more. Be sure and hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up and drop comments or questions down below.